What's up, everybody? This is Mad Taco, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to be bringing you a two-tabling video of 10NL here on Stars. And I'm making this video to show that even as you're moving up through the stakes, that 10NL does not really play all that much differently. The level of play does increase a bit, but the important thing to remember is the same concepts that you've learned at 2NL and 5NL are still going to apply at these games. I've just sat down at this table. I don't have any reads on my opponents yet, and I actually just sat down at this table as well. PokerStars offers the really cool 100 to 250 big blind deep ante tables, and I really enjoy playing this because whenever you get deep stacked with an opponent, looks like this guy doesn't want to play, which is unfortunate. But these tables are extremely profitable if you develop a relatively strong game. And he sat back down, so let's see if we can get some heads-up action going here. Looks like we're going to be three-way. And I really don't want to make the video focused on heads-up play. It's important to have a good heads-up game, but not that critical at these levels. And I'm already getting some good notes here, and I really can't do much with the Jack-9 offsuit, unfortunately, as much as I would like to raise it up here, just because that is such a weak line. Excuse me. Open limping on the button like that, especially three-handed, it just means he has something he's really not all that interested in, but we don't flop well enough to continue here. Ace-5 suited with just the button left act, I'll raise that up. It's pretty close. In general, you should be avoiding raising up these marginal aces and like the cutoff, but I'll raise that up there. We get min 3-bet by the small blind, and the button cold calls. I will call here simply because the price we're being offered is way too good, and the big blind coming along really reinforces my decision, and the fact that my hand can flop extremely well. And I'm not gonna c-bet here on this kind of board because I don't think he's gonna fold often enough. And this is what I'm talking about by what I say that I can flop much better than like Ace-5 offsuit can. Whenever he min bets here, I'm actually not gonna raise. I'm gonna peel a turn and see what goes from there. And when he checks to me checks to me here, I am in a c-bet on this turn, really just as a pure bluff. And he just folds. He leads out. This is pretty close, and I'm not being offered direct odds, but the thing is if I had any ace, any 5, or any heart, I'm probably good here, so I actually am going to peel and see a river in this pot. And not only that, when he bets that weak, I'm not putting him in anything all that great. But he got pretty excited on the river, so now I am going to pitch my Ace-5 suited here. These ante tables create a lot more action too. People are really going to be willing to loosen up their game. And if this guy keeps calling me in position like this, I'm probably going to tighten up my small blind range considerably. And I am going to c-bet this board. Not the best board to c-bet, but this guy seems like he's fairly loose pre-flop, but he's giving up on the flop and the turn quite a bit in the few hands that I've played with him. And I'll obviously be c-betting this board for value. And he just folds. Jack-10 offsuit, playing it out of position kind of sucks. If I had like a Jack-10 suited here, Queen-Jack suited, I would call this just because we're playing three-handed, but Jack-10 offsuit is just not going to do well enough, so I'm going to let that go. Also, I feel as if this player is actually going to be raising with a fairly tight, excuse me, with a fairly tight range. and he's calling with most of his junk, but he's actually raising his stronger hands, is the impression that I get so far. And for what it's worth, on the ace-5 suited hand earlier, raising the flop versus a min bet would not be a bad play. So I would not mind that at all. And this is the first time that he's led. He leads out fairly small. The problem is that my pocket fours have virtually no chance to improve. So, I'm just going to pitch it. And this is great because now looks like we're going to get heads up versus a weak opponent. And I'll call with my weak ace here, but play it fairly passively after the flop. And I'm not going to call with my queen 10 suited here versus his open. He bets this so weak. I mean, a third pot. I'm actually going to look him up with my third pair here. I expect him to give up if he doesn't have anything, which is exactly what it looks like he's doing. When he checks the turn that quick. I had pocket eights, so that's a pretty good read to have. This kind of sucks because the 3-better is so short, but the problem is that we're being offered an awesome price now with these two guys in the pot. I'm calling just purely to set mine, and I'm set mining against these two guys, not this guy, because his stack is so short. Thankfully, I do flop the nuts, but it's on a board that's probably not going to get me a whole lot of action. Board like King 10 deuce would be great. Now when he leads here, that's interesting because his overcall pre-flop and now his lead actually tells me that he has a hand like pocket deuces, pocket threes, queens, something like that. So I'm going to put in a raise to where it's really, really easy to get stacks in if I'm just called, and if he doesn't ship back over the top. And that is our gin card. And he shoves, snap calling. Huh. Alright. Sorry. Okay. And that drain you folded, so that's weird. So he overcalls 3-bet pre. Four-way. That was a really interesting play, especially by this guy. And this guy here had a king queen. I'm not sure if you guys can see that in the video, but he just had king queen offsuit. Yeah, I actually will raise this up here. I don't like that this player is right here because of that reason specifically. So that's pretty important. Whenever you've got a guy that you notice is probably kind of tilted and is just freaking out, it's actually a good idea to tighten up your button opening range because he's going to do this kind of move a lot. And I'm not calling here in like king 7 off because I have seen him min 3-bet with king queen before, so I know that he has, well, at least I can be somewhat confident he has something. He doesn't have complete garbage unless he's just on insane spew tilt right now, which he may be, but I'm just not going to get myself into a tough spot with king 7 offsuit there. And on this board, this guy seems fairly tight. I am tempted to make a move here, but I'm probably going to call, and I'd like to see what the turn brings. If he bets again, let's see what happens here, because we flop such a massive amount of equity that check raise shoving on this board, it might look attractive, but the problem is we're drawing to a gut shot straight draw if we're already beat. And if this guy is going to continue barreling on the turn and river, I'm putting him on a jacks plus, because I just don't think that players are going to double and triple barrel enough. So I think that actually check raising all in this spot would actually be kind of spewy. But now when he checks again, I'm putting him on air or maybe some kind of weak pair, so I'm not going to bet very big at all and hope to get a loose call out of this guy. Let's see what he showed up with. And he leaves the table. Oh well. He had ace king high, so I actually got a very loose call out of him by doing that. And auto-folding the king 8 offsuit there was kind of the mistake. Normally I would raise that up as a blind steal, but it's pretty close, especially against a guy that I have no reads on. So auto-folding there was kind of the mistake. But you can see on this hand that I just took a second and really analyzed the action on the turn in the river, and I'm thinking, okay, what is this guy going to call me with? Because when he checks the turn, I know he's not interested, and I know he really doesn't have anything. So I really have to just stop for a second and wonder, what can I get him to call? How big can I place my bet to get him to call with, like, well, ace king high is a very, very loose call there, especially given the flop texture. But I'm thinking something like maybe even as weak as like pocket 3s, pocket 4s, because you actually will see those hands show up every now and then. I'm just going to keep betting here. If he check raises here, I'm probably going to lay my hand down. And of course that's a disaster card because it hits what he's willing to check call with, like, so hard. I expect him actually to lead a lot here, and I'm just going to lay my hand down. And yeah, he ships it in, so I'm going to take a note and move on. And I'm not going to play a hand like 10-8 suited out of position versus a button open. That's not what these hands are really designed to do. So that's an easy lay down there. Well, so far in the video, as you can probably tell, the same strategies that you've been using at 2NL and 5NL are going to work here. The level of play is not really all that different. And you get to experiment a bit too. Like, don't be afraid to fire up these 250 big blind deep tables with the antes, because whenever people play deep stacked and there's more money on the table, they're going to tend to make a lot more mistakes. They're going to stack off whenever they really shouldn't be. Excuse me. They're going to play the wrong kind of hands deep stacked. Like, for example, they're going to overvalue their top pair kind of hands whenever they're deep stacked, when in reality those hands go down in value a whole lot. You want to be playing hands that are going to make nut hands a lot more often. Like, you're looking for nut straights, nut flushes, and things like that. Not top pair, top kicker. Those kind of hands are going to get you in a lot of trouble when you're playing really deep. Unfortunately, there's only one other guy at the table that we're actually fairly deep with, this Welsh Joe guy, and he hasn't played any hands yet. He was just waiting for the blind to come around to him. But we're going to see how he plays. And this is pretty loose, but I'm just going to see how this guy reacts to the blind steal. We get called. This is why you really don't want to do it with hands like this, because whenever you get called, you're going to be put into a weird spot post-flop. But I am going to c-bet this board. And he just folds. I actually am going to take a note over that. As some regulars will actually play back at you on these kind of boards because they realize that you're not going to hit it that often. And Mr. Spider-Man here is probably going to be our ATM at the table, given that he's limp calling and he's check calling twice with his flush draws and stuff. I'm not going to c-bet this board because I think he'll actually call with just random overs a lot. So I'm just going to check and see a turn. I really don't like these super low boards. They're not fun. After he checks twice, I'll throw out a bet here, but not very big. I don't think he's going to continue a lot after he checks twice to me. That's a good general read to have on players is whenever you're in position and they check twice to you, if you did not c-bet the flop and they check both the flop and the turn, that's actually a sign that they're probably just going to give up, because I notice a lot of players are going to lead whenever they have hit anything. They will lead the turn. Ace deuce offsuit against this guy, I'm actually just going to let that go, because if the button calls, it's really going to suck if we flop an ace, because his calling range there is so heavy with aces, if he's any good, assuming. And it's going to make it really, really hard to play our hand being out of position versus the button, even whenever we do flop an ace. So hands like ace deuce offsuit are, if I was on the button, I would probably raise that up and isolate this guy, but not in the cutoff though. This guy might be a bit of a reg. He's on my left at 2 tables now, and he's auto reloading his stack to the maximum amount. So that tells me almost right away that he's a regular kind of player. This guy's opening quite a bit, and I may start 3-betting him in position as time goes on. This table is looking rather tight, so I actually may swap it out. I'm not going to make a play with Jack-9 offsuit, especially versus this under the gun range. It will be a lot tighter, so I'm just going to let that go. So we've got a check raise from Spider-Man over here on a pretty dry board. I'm going to assume he had something he liked there, but no telling really. You can see that these ante-tables really put out a lot more money in the middle. Like you've got slightly over a big blind already in the pot, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm actually going to find another table over here. That mega hand where we flopped top set on the 10-3 deuce kind of shattered the table, I'm afraid, so we'll have to move on. And for what it's worth, on that pocket tens hand, I would definitely not be calling that player's 3-bet if the small blind and the big blind had not came along. That's really, really important. I will bet this flop with my middle pair for thin value against this player. If he gets excited and raises me, of course, I'm just going to fold. I'm also betting there, excuse me, because concept of dead money that he's creating by limping on the button. If he's limping on the button, it's pretty obvious he has something that he's really not all that excited about. So on an ace-high flop like that, I expect him to just simply give up more often than not. Unfortunately, during this time of day, the tables can be a little tight. But let's go ahead and sit down at this deep stack table. And I can probably already tell right away I don't like my position at the table that much, because just typecasting, you've got this guy showing 1 bronze star with a really awkward stack size, and I'm directly to his right and directly to the tight player's left. So I'm actually going to swap seats here. This will improve my position slightly by moving to this seat instead of being directly right there. You really got to look out for these small edges in the game because they add up so much. And I may have isolated Spider-Man here with the Queen 8 offsuit, but when this player decides to attack him before I did, I'm just going to let it go. Queen 8 offsuit is pretty borderline, but against players like this that are probably just going to check fold most flops, I think it's okay to have a fairly wide isolating range on the button. This is actually pretty interesting, and I want to explain why. It's because this guy has been hammering Spider-Man with his raises, and so I'm not going to 3-bet. I'm going to 3-bet to a standard size 3x. I'm really hoping that he just thinks I'm making a play here, because that's honestly kind of what it looks like after he's been isolating so much. And I'm not going to let this guy get away with a limp on the button. With my Queen Jack offsuit, I am going to raise it up here. He snap calls, and I flop a jack, which is what I wanted. And he just folds. Unfortunately, they both fold, which is kind of a shame, but if they had anything really worth continuing with, I'm sure we would have seen some fireworks there. And even in the deep stacked ante games, I'm not changing my preflop open size. Some players do elect to do that simply because the pot is considerably bigger than in a standard small blind big blind game. But I find that players, they really don't care. They're not going to adapt to that. So I'm just keeping my raise size the same, and I'm profiting more so because of it. I find that you might get played back at a little bit more, but not enough to make any kind of big adjustments. And I flop Jin versus this guy. Not the best board, but I am going to bet it rather big because I intend to get stacks. And yeah, when he, this is pretty important, guys. He has quite a bit of money left behind, but the problem is that I cannot risk making just a standard re-raise to like, I don't know, $4, $5 here, and risk him calling and having the turn come absolute disaster like the 10 of clubs or something like that. So therefore, whenever I am certain that I have the best hand here, sometimes he'll show up in 9-10, but there's nothing you can do about that. I'm just going to shove all my money in right now and get it in whenever I think I have the best of it. And we get overset, but there's, you know, that's going to happen in poker, and there's nothing you can do about that, so you just mop it up and move on. When he c-bets on this board, I'm just going to let that go. I will make a note here, excuse me, that he open limp 8-8 under the gun and min check raise with middle set. Yeah, in that kind of situation, if he had some kind of weird drawing hand, there's just no way that I can let him see a turn. Like, if I raise there and he just calls, but the turn brings just the most god-awful card in the world, that really, really sucks and makes our hand super difficult to play. This guy is giving up quite a lot on flops, I've noticed, but I really don't like c-betting these boards, so I'm going to check it back and see turn card in position. He bets out pretty quickly, and he bets out a decent size. I'm just going to let my ace-king go. And he actually had the courtesy to show us his top pair, which is pretty awesome. So thank you, sir. That's the turn with the top pair after. I probably never will truly understand why players choose to do that. They will choose to show their hands. Obviously, you guys know that that's not a move that you should be taking hardly ever, unless you pull off some kind of insane bluff and you think it's going to put the guy on this monster tilt is really the only exception to that. But other than that, don't show your hands. It's just giving away information that you don't have to. And this really, really applies to the online setting. In a live game, it's a little different, but generally the same rules are still going to apply. And you probably noticed that my typecasting of this Slayer Arthas guy, as soon as I sat down at the table, was indeed correct. He's the table whale, and everybody's got their eyes on him. And you can just tell that immediately as soon as you sit down at a table against certain players. Showing the one bronze star, having a weird stack size, those are just alarms going off saying, play against me, I'm a weak player, take my cash, I don't know what I'm doing. And unfortunately he coolered us with the 8s over 7s, but there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. So you just take a note and you move on, and you will get your money back against these kind of players. You just have to be patient and play smart poker. This guy to my left seems so tight that if he ever makes any kind of move, it's going to make our decisions really easy. Being deep stacked actually makes the dynamic a little different, and if any kind of situations come up, I will try to explain how being deep stacked does make it different. The play here is surprisingly tight, so I'm gonna keep opening fairly wide and taking down these pots that are already decent size pre-flop because of the antes. So if you want to get into more marginal spots, being deep stacked with more money on the table, definitely give these deep stack tables a try. I would not recommend it unless you're properly rolled for the game. I wouldn't recommend playing deep stack tables, excuse me, unless you're very comfortable with your play and you have at least 20 buy-ins for your stake, because you'd be quite surprised how fast you can drop your bankroll if you lose like 2 buy-ins or so at these tables, because all of a sudden you're down 5 buy-ins for your actual stake if you drop your entire stack at these tables. So you have to be kind of careful of what you're doing. Ace-8 offsuit is definitely isolating material against Spider-Man here. So I will raise that up. And he has not raised a single hand, so that means that his range can actually be stronger aces, which is kind of awkward. On this kind of board, I will bet if he check raises, it really sucks, which is kind of why I'm hesitant to do it. But I'm just going to bet for value here and expect him to call with his draws and stuff quite a bit. That's not the best card because a 9-8 got there. He could have some kind of random queen that got there. So I'm actually just going to check this back. And of course the king is not the best card either if he has any of that in his range, which I think he very often does. He bets pretty small. The only problem is that we don't really beat anything that he's willing to check call the flop with, except for total error. So he either has to have an absolute bluff here or something. So we're just gonna have to let our hand go, because our fourth pair is just not going to do the job, even against a small river lead like that. I don't think that he's very strong there, but at the same time, he actually might be stronger than I am with my fourth pair. Queen 10 offsuit is just a little too marginal under the gun. As much as I'd like to play a pot in position versus this guy, having 2 players left to act is just... that's going to affect my decision a lot. So that's a little too loose to be opening under the gun 5-handed. My main objective, though, is to play pots in position heads up versus this player, though. I actually don't mind his check behind there. This player had ace-10 on this board. Raised that really, really big pre-flop. He must be using, I'm guessing he's using Table Ninja or some software to determine bet sizes, why his size was so weird there. And he overbets the river, so he must have hit some kind of monster here. Yep. Unfortunately, I was going to call with my pocket 4s and set mine, but now we really can't versus this 3-bet here. We just have to let our hand go. Especially, this isn't really even all that important in our decision, but it also matters because we're not closing the action. Big blind is left to act, and the original pre-flop raiser is left to act. So if we would have called there with our 4s, this guy just 4-bet, and then you're just going to have to let your hand go. So calling there would have been a very big mistake. Even if he wouldn't have 4-bet this player's 3-bet, it still would have been a mistake. This is pretty close, but I am going to raise up this ace rag kind of hand just because I want to play pots in position versus this player a lot, and I'm assuming the button will fold quite often given his stats I have in him so far. I'm not going to c-bet here because I'm not really c-betting for value. Our bottom pair is good most of the time, so I'm actually just going to check here and see a turn. I really don't want to be check raised off of my hand, is the reason that I like to take that line. When he checks twice, though, I am going to go ahead and bet here and see if I can get some kind of weird loose call out of him. But again, when a player checks twice, more often than not, they're going to be weak. So checking your bottom pair on boards like that sometimes is actually a decent idea, because it does suck whenever we get check raised and we have to fold our hand. And so I don't mind checking behind there, excuse me, in position and seeing a turn. And after he checks the turn as well, I'm mainly betting just to, excuse me, take down the money that he's put in there right now, because I don't think he's going to call that often. And ace-4 offsuit, it's not strong enough to raise out of position versus this player. Hmm. Debating on whether or not to take a shot at this, and I think he's going to call with so much garbage, though, that it's really not worth it. Yeah, I'm just going to drop it. And I will definitely be calling here with a pocket sevens if we don't face a 3-bet in front of us, just to set mine. And unfortunately, we yet again do face a 3-bet in front of us, so I have to let my hand go. This guy 3-bet rather big too. He made it 4x in position, so that tells me he probably had something that he really liked. And I feel as if this table is, now that Joker here has left, that the table is tightened up considerably, so I will find another table now. This table over here isn't the best either, but I've got position on Spider-Man, and he's got a fairly decent stack, so I plan to stick around. And I will definitely steal here with the Queen-7 offsuit. When this player calls, though, I'm putting him on almost exclusively a small pocket pair, and he's going to check fold. Matter of fact, he's going to check fold so often that I don't have to c-bet like 60 or 70 cents here. And I can actually probably make it just 40 because he's going to check fold, yeah, virtually all the time, unless he hits, because his range there of just calling in the small blind and not 3-betting is almost exclusively small pocket pairs. So you can see that we can manipulate that information to our advantage by c-betting small. And I know he's going to fold more often than not, so there's really no reason to bet bigger. And I will c-bet this board mainly because it's a good board to c-bet. I think he's going to fold or let me know he has something quite a bit. So that makes my decision rather easy. And I will set mine here with the pocket sixes. And I'm definitely not going to be calling this bet, and I think it's really important to explain why. It's because whenever this player raises, gets called by the bad player on the button, and gets called by me in the blind, his c-betting range is going to be narrowed much more toward the side of value, because he's not going to be as willing to c-bet with his air here, because he knows that this bad player is either going to call or raise him up a lot, and there's nothing he's going to be able to do about it. So that means that I'm putting him on a made hand here, and my pocket sixes really have virtually no chance. And even if he doesn't have anything here, like he has ace high, there's going to be too many turn cards that I'm not going to be willing to continue on, so that's a pretty easy fold right there. I'll play a little bit more heads up. See how this guy plays. King 10 offsuit is kind of close, but I'm not going to let him get away with a limp. I'm going to raise him up. I'm just going to bet this rather big and hope he thinks I'm full of it. If he would have raised me there, it's kind of an awkward spot. I'll definitely be c-betting this board, especially our first hand heads up when we hit our bottom set, but unfortunately he just folds. 9-7 suited is a hand that plays extremely well from the button. It's a shame these two players are so tight because I expect them to either fold or 3-bet more often than not. And yeah, we do get 3-bet, and don't call these 3-bets like this because even though we do have position and we're on the button, not only are we not deep enough to really warrant playing a hand like 9-7 suited, but we're just going to have to fold so many flops. It's pretty ridiculous. And if we catch like a pair of 9s or a pair of 7s, like some weird middle pair, it's going to get you into a lot of trouble, so just let your hand go. Those are the kind of spots you don't want to be in because you're going to lose a lot of money if you get into them. Jack 7 offsuit in the cutoff is just a little too thin to isolate this player. Considering too that he's never he's never limp folding, he's always limp calling. So I want my range to be a little bit stronger than that. And you can see this table filled up quite quickly, and the reason for that is I find that most players get very, very uncomfortable when they play heads up. And heads-up play is, without a doubt, the most profitable form of poker. It's really not even close. If you develop a fairly strong heads-up game and you play it regularly at your stakes, you will turn quite a large profit. Just because it's generally one of the more glaring weaknesses in a player's overall game is heads-up play. And Mr. Rudder 49 is obviously not going to get away with an open limp on the button. King Jack suited is way too strong just to complete the small blind here. And he just folds. I will 3-bet here for value, actually. Even though we only have 4 hands in this guy, he has been fairly active, and I feel as if that he will call quite a bit, which I'm totally fine with. On this kind of board, I'm actually counting on him to play fairly fit or fold. I don't think we're going to get check raised that often. And in a 3-bet pot, you really don't need to even bet very big because most players are going to play very fit or fold, and when he checks to me that quickly, I'm putting him on like an ace-jack kind of hand, maybe like a ace-jack, ace-queen, some kind of hand like that. So I'm going to go ahead and bet this, and I expect to take it down quite often, even on this kind of board. Unfortunately, we do get called. We actually turn an extremely good card. I don't think he's that strong here. I'm actually going to go ahead and put him in on a bluff. We turn the second nut flush draw, and I have 2 overs just in case we are called, but I don't think he's calling here all that terribly often. And he just folds. So that's a pretty good note to have. He versus button, check call. Oh. And I do want to emphasize, guys, that these kind of plays, you need to be really, really selective with them. I used a combination of what I thought his likely range was versus what my perceived range is. And whenever, especially whenever I shove the turn like that, I'm really representing a very strong hand, queens plus generally. If a perceptive player can recognize that my fairly small flop c-bet is an attempt to take it away, but even if it is, he's going to have to pull a move like check raising me, or he's going to have to float out of position, and both of which are going to make his hand difficult to play no matter what happens. So by being in position, we effectively made it almost impossible for him to play his hand. Even if he was ahead, it's going to be too difficult for him to really get money in comfortably, even on a board like this. And when the Seven of Hearts comes on the turn, that's actually one of the best cards in the deck for me, because I have turned a massive amount of equity for up against pocket tens, pocket jacks, sometimes even pocket queens. And I feel as if that whenever I just shove all in on the turn there, he's going to be forced to fold more often than not, even with like his pocket tens, pocket jacks kind of hand. So this would be a great hand to discuss in the beginner chat, and I hope to hear you guys' feedback on it. And I'm probably going broke versus this guy on this board. I'm not really too scared of that card. It's not the best card, but I'm still just going to keep barreling here for value. That looks pretty good. Huh. What can he have here? Check calls, flop. Check calls, turn. Is there value in a bet? I think a small one, yes. The problem is that I really hate getting a check raise shipped on. I'm going to bet here quite small for very, very thin value. It sucks when he has two pair here, but I think we're going to see a queen a lot. Because the board did run out rather bad. Let's see how he reacts to this. And we take it down. I'm going to guess he had a queen or an 8 there quite often. He had an 8. Wow. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be condescending toward the players, but you guys know that his play here is, of course, absolutely atrocious. And my river bet, I bet that small with the intention of getting looked up by a much worse hand, like an 8 or a queen. If I bet this river big, but he check raise ships on us, like say instead of betting 320, I bet like 6 or 5 something. The problem is that the stack sizes are just so that we can't fold. We can't fold to his check raise, and whenever we do get check raised on that river, our aces are hardly ever good, obviously, because he has billions of 2-pair combos in his range. Sometimes he has made straights. And I feel that by betting that small on the river, I can extract just a little bit more value out of this player. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that the hand played out, and I think we got good value out of our pocket aces versus his Jack 8 offsuit there. I'll let the video run for one more orbit, and then I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Yet again, we got into some really interesting spots. I enjoyed playing that King-Queen suited hand where I 3-bet Mr. Rudder from the button, and how that played out was really interesting. I think that'll make for some good discussion. The pocket aces hand that we just witnessed was a great example of how to extract thin value out of an opponent that I am very, very sure is going to call us with worse. And not only that, something I did forget to mention during the hand, but earlier on I had seen him lead out on the river after check calling twice when the flush hit on the river. So I actually expect this player to lead out with his made hands on the river because he's afraid he's going to miss value and I'm going to check behind with some other hand that I might have. So whenever he checks there, I'm not really putting him on anything all that great. I think that sometimes, yes, we will run into some random 2-pair that he's kind of passively playing and isn't sure what to do with, and he might be scared of the board as well. But I think that more often than not, though, you're going to see some kind of queen or eight, and you will get paid off. And I think that checking behind there on the river is, it's not terrible, but it's a mistake in the sense that you are going to miss out on value if you don't look for those spots. I don't think that betting large there on the river would have been wise, because yet again, for the fact that if we do get check raised, which will happen in that spot sometimes, well, what's happened is that we completely committed ourselves. There's nothing we can do, and we're forced to stack off with pocket aces, which are never good on that board versus a check raise on the river. So by betting, I think I bet just right under half pot, an amount around that, we set up a leverage point to where if we do get check raise shipped on, it still sucks, but we can fold our hand and get away from it. Okay, well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and the main thing that I want you to take away from it is even at 10-0, your play doesn't have to change all that much. I would say that the most quote-unquote fancy play that we saw was the king-queen suited hand where I shoved all in on the turn as a semi-bluff. Don't feel like you need to incorporate that into your game quite yet. These stakes are very, very beatable without having to try to pull moves like that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Feel free to ask questions in the beginners chat, and you guys take care.